What's up, everybody? I am Grant Burton, and today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm not streaming a video game, that's the main thing you'll notice. Instead, I am just doing a sit back, relaxed talk, discussion, review of all the things I've been watching on TV and in the movies. Because if you didn't know, I do film and TV reviews on my YouTube channel at _Grant Burton. Check that out now. But I don't have time to review everything. I don't have time to do videos on everything. There are certain things I want to discuss, certain things I want to talk about that I just can't do because of timing reasons and, life. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm going to get a discussion going about primarily some of the movies. We'll see how long that takes. Might go into some of the TV shows, might leave that for another time. But we'll get straight into it now with... What are we getting into? What's the first thing? So I'm not going to talk about some of the things I have already reviewed. Those are on my YouTube channel right now. Instead, we'll go into The Color Purple, the 2024 version of The Color Purple. So I've not seen the Steven Spielberg original. I've not seen the stage production. The Color Purple is the 2024 Color Purple is an adaptation of the stage production, which I believe is an adaptation of the Steven Spielberg movie and the original book I think it was based on. So this is a perfectly fine musical. It takes itself very seriously. It's very dramatic, very dark in certain ways. And it's about a woman who is taken from her home and family, married off to someone she doesn't particularly like. And that someone is very abusive towards her. And that someone in this film is played by Colman Domingo, a guy I really like. A very, very good actor, puts off a very good performance. The musical numbers in this film are great. The acting and the performances in this film are great. It's a pretty good, well-made movie. It's just not one that I've thought all that much about since viewing it. And again, I've not seen the Spielberg original. I cannot compare it to that. I don't think this is going to be a classic. I don't think this is going to be a film that people will look back on in years' times and think, oh, that's the classic. I think the Spielberg one is still going to be that. So that's kind of all I've got to say about that one, if I'm honest. ISS. So ISS... Am I streaming? Looking at this stream. Let's have a look. What's going on here? Am I streaming? Because it looks like I'm on the wrong thing. Let's have a look. So on here, it looks like it's just got the waiting screen on, but on my end, it looks like, no, we are actually on the main screen. Maybe I just need to reload it. No, I am streaming. And I don't know why I'm getting that image on my end. Yep, there it is. It just hadn't reloaded. So there we go. ISS, International Space Station, is a thriller movie starring Ariana DeBois. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Don't really care. And it's a fairly by-the-books thriller in many ways. It reminds me a lot of the film Life, which had Ryan Reynolds in it a few years ago. Only there's no aliens this time. Instead, what happens is it's an ISS space station. Half of it's run by an American team, half of it's run by a Russian team. And while in space, away from everything, they see what looks like the start of World War III happening on Earth. They see all these explosions going off, these nuclear warheads. Each side then gets pulled back and in communication with their own side. It's a bit of a paranoid thriller at this point. Have the Russians been told to do something? Have the Americans been told to do something? We know from the American perspective they have. They've been told to seize the space station. There's a lot of cool ideas here. The sets and the costumes is all very good. It looks very believable. But the problem is, as a thriller, it just doesn't have many of those thrills. The initial idea is cool. It just doesn't really go anywhere. And as you might expect, chaos ensues, people start falling out, having arguments and fights, and that's basically the film. And it's short, I'll give you that, but it feels longer than it is, which is a problem for a thriller. You kind of want it to go at a breakneck pace, you want to be surprised, you want to have some twists and turns in there, and there just isn't any. So yeah, pretty disappointing on that front, I've got to say. That's ISS. What would I give the colour purple? I would give the colour purple probably a 6 out of 10, which is okay in my rating scale. ISS probably closer to a 4 off the top of my head, which is poor. What we got now? American Fiction. So American Fiction, did I review American? I think I've reviewed American Fiction on my channel, so I'm not going to talk about that right now. What else is there? We have Imaginary. I reviewed that. The Beekeeper. I did not review The Beekeeper. So The Beekeeper is a Jason Statham action thriller film. He is a former, almost like super spy soldier kind of person, and now he's living a life as a beekeeper. He just wants to be away from it all. But when one of his friends working in this farm is harassed and essentially gets all her money and possessions stolen from her due to like an online scam, he gets involved and he tries to save the day. And well, it turns out the people who scammed her are linked to people of his past and the government and all this other stuff. There's a bunch of conspiracy stuff going on here. This is a fairly by-the-books traditional action thriller. There's not a huge amount of originality to it. The whole beekeeper idea is a bit odd. It doesn't always work, I don't think. I think it's a bit on the cheesy side without it actually exploring that. It's a film that's somewhat cheesy without realising it, and that's a bit of a problem. But Jason Statham's fine. They've got him in here playing an American, so he is putting on an American accent, which is very odd for Jason Statham, you know. A guy with a very distinct voice and accent, and here you are asking him to do something else. It's a choice. I don't think the accent's bad, but you kind of want Jason Statham just to be Jason Statham, don't you? Jeremy Irons is in there as one of the main villains. He's probably the highlight of the film because, you know, he's just a great actor. The action scenes are actually pretty good. There's some good creativity here, some cool moments. I particularly like the moments when he's just being a badass infiltrating this internet scam location and taking it down. He's got these one-liners. He's got these cool lines that bring fear into all who oppose him. And yeah, this is a cool little film, but nothing to write home about, I don't think. 5 out of 10, mediocre. What have we got now? Drive Away Dolls. Did I review Drive Away Dolls? I don't know. I'll go and talk about it now. So, the Coen brothers. This is not a Coen brothers movie because it's only made by one of the Coen brothers. He's went off and done this on his own with his wife, I believe. And Drive Away Dolls is a homage to little thrillers of the 70s, basically. It's full of that 70s style as well, but not necessarily in a good way. Drive Away Dolls is, I don't think, very good. I think it is a very overtly old-fashioned film, and it doesn't always nail what it's going for. Its central plot, I think, is just a little too silly and outlandish. There's a lot of sexual jokes and humor in this movie. A lot of the jokes just don't work, I don't think. I think it's a little dated in many regards. The acting, particularly from Margaret Qualley in the lead role, is fantastic. She is great. She is the best thing about this film. You've got cameos from Pedro Pascal and Matt Damon and a bunch of other names. But this is a very short, brisk film. It's, I think, less than an hour and a half once you take away the credits and stuff. But Drive Away Dolls has this style and atmosphere and mood that just doesn't vibe with the story and the characters that's featured in it. So it's a real miss, I think, for one of the Coen brothers. And it makes me wonder, is the other Coen brother the better of the two? I can only assume on that one. But yeah, Drive Away Dolls, really did not like it. I'm tempted to give this a 4 out of 10, which is poor. But honestly, it might be a 3. I don't give out 3s, so off the top of my head, I can't remember what I would say a 3 is. Let's have a quick look. 3 is bad. Yeah, just bad. That might be what Drive Away Dolls is to me. It's hard to say for certain. But it's definitely down in that region, I'll tell you that. Then we've got Damsel. So Damsel is the Millie Bobby Brown Netflix fantasy film, and it's not bad. I think Damsel is in many ways Netflix trying to be a traditional fantasy action flick. And Millie Bobby Brown is great in the lead role. I think she's actually a very good actress. I know she gets a lot of flack for certain things, but I don't get it. I like Millie Bobby Brown. The special effects are actually quite good for this film. They put a lot of time and effort into it. This is a young adult fantasy film in many ways, but in certain regards it lacks a bit of originality. She is a princess to this lord or king who isn't doing so well in these days, financially speaking, so he has to marry her off to a wealthier kingdom in order to reap the benefits and to save his own lands and people. So she goes along with it because she loves her father. The father is played by Ray Winston. Along the way, we find out that the family that she's marrying into is a little shady. They've got some secrets that they're harboring, and yeah, they're not good secrets, let's put it that way. So we find out very quickly what those secrets are. About halfway through the film, we know everything that's going on, and the rest of the film is just about her trying to survive. And in that regard, I think it's very interesting. There's a lot of interesting, cool stuff going on. But the problem is that latter half of the film, that last like 45 minutes or whatever, is set primarily in one location. It's about her trying to outrun a dragon, basically. Dragon voiced by Shohreh Aghdashloo, who is a legend. Great voice work here. And there are some cool action beats, there are some cool survival elements, but it just feels like there should have just been a bit more at stake, a bit more variety to it. Maybe the dragon should have been one piece and then she moves on to another thing and then she goes on this large journey. Instead, she just kind of spends the rest of the film in a cave. And yeah, a bit disappointing in that regard. But like I said, there are some cool moments. The action's decent. The performances are good. It all comes together quite well and in certain emotional ways. Ray Winston's doing a pretty good job here. I like Millie Bobby Brown. You've got Angela Bassett in there. I think she's quite good in it as well. She plays the queen and the mother of the person she's marrying. But yeah, Damsel, not too bad. Just not going to blow your mind away, I don't think. The special effects, the visuals, the world building, I think is one of the highlights, yeah. I would give it a 5 out of 10. Tempted to give it a 6. Next up. What did I not review for my channel? Kung Fu Panda 4. I didn't review that for my channel. So I've actually been watching the Kung Fu Panda films this past year for the first time. And to my surprise, they're actually pretty good. I didn't expect this. They are family-friendly animated movies, so you kind of get what they're going to do. They tell a very traditional hero's tale sort of thing. If you've ever seen like Star Wars, I think you'll see a lot of the influences of that in the first film in particular. There's a lot of Jedi vibes from the Kung Fu masters in these movies. And Kung Fu Panda 4 is the one that kind of brings them all together in an unnecessary but still fun time. So this time around, a lot of the side characters like Angelina Jolie and Seth Rogen, Jackie Chan, they've been pushed to the side. They're not even in there. The characters do appear, but they don't talk. I think maybe one of them has like one line, but that's it. So that's disappointing that some of the best, most fun characters of the previous movies are just gone. This time around, it's very much focused on Po and his two dads, and a new character played by Awkwafina. I love Awkwafina. I think she's got a great voice. The role that she's playing here, they want you to wonder, is this person a good person? Is this person a villain? Are they a rogue? Are they somewhere in between? And they also want you to establish this relationship with Po that's kind of a almost antagonistic, cheeky, humorous relationship. And it just doesn't quite work. I don't think they've got a lot of chemistry together as characters. The voice acting's there, the performance is there, but these characters just don't vibe. And the film kind of forces this character to be something that I don't think it fully deserves. I'm trying to avoid the spoilers here. But they bring back Ian McShane as one of the villains. They've got a new villain played by Viola Davis, who is brilliant. The animation here is fantastic. They've got a lot of creativity going on. The main character is a chameleon, so she's changing shapes and characters and forms. And yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff here. A lot of fun animation, a lot of good action scenes. Some of the comedy's pretty good. But on a story level, it's all just a little unnecessary. Why did we need the fourth entry? It doesn't really justify itself. Why did we need these villains being brought back if they don't speak or do anything that they did in the previous movies? That's a bit disappointing. Why are all these characters absent? Yeah, it just feels like this is a by the book sequel that didn't really need to exist. But it's still fun. So I would probably give it a 6, maybe a 5 if I was being a bit harsh. Has the stream stopped again? Is that what's happening? I can't tell anymore. What's going on? No, it looks like it's continuing. It's just my phone is constantly freezing, which is unfortunate. What next? What we got next? The Beautiful Game. So The Beautiful Game is a Netflix movie. It's Bill Nye, who is a football manager who's now one of the managers of the Homeless Football League, I believe it's called, or whatever it's called. It's a real thing, based on a true story. The Homeless Football League, they take people from the streets who are homeless and make them play football. It sounds worse than what it actually is. It's actually a very good charitable endeavour. And Bill Nye is the manager. He's got this new recruit who is kind of in denial about his current state of where he is in his life. He is homeless, but he doesn't consider himself homeless. He isn't doing very well off, but he doesn't really say it that way. So it's a lot of about him coming to terms with who he is and accepting that he's not better than the rest of the people on this team. And also just this whole fun football league. It's a comedy drama. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Some of the characters are fun. The jokes are good. There's a heartwarming element to this. It's very just chill, relaxed. I would say too long. I believe it's about 2 hours long. You could probably get rid of about half an hour of it. At about halfway through it, that does start to drag, and it feels like it gets into its third act, only to then backpedal, and it then just carries on, and then it goes into its third act again. And it's got a weird structure to it. It feels like it's a 5-act structure rather than a 3-act structure. But otherwise, it's well made, it's funny, it's lighthearted, it's heartwarming. It's got emotional elements to it. The actors and the characters are very good. It's filmed in, I believe, Rome. So it's all on location, very bright, very colourful, great sets and locations. It's a very good looking film. And yeah, I wouldn't call it a biopic. It's more inspired by true events rather than based on them. So I'm not sure about the accuracy of it. But yeah, this is a very enjoyable film. It's just a good time. It's not going to win loads of awards. It's not going to get loads of attention. But if you're looking for something to do one evening, I think it's about 2 hours on, put it on. Yeah, it does drag a bit towards the back end, but there's still a lot of fun to be had. A lot of good montages, a lot of good football sequences. If you're a football fan, there's something to enjoy there. And yeah, that's about all I've got to say about that. The Beautiful Game, I would give it a 6 out of 10. It's a good time. Just, yeah, what more do you want? Keeping with Bill Nye, we've got The First Omen. So The First Omen came out, and this got rave reviews. A lot of people are saying it's one of the best horror films this year. A lot of people are saying that it's one of just the best films this year. And in a certain regard, I agree. On another regard, I completely disagree. I did not like this film. I thought this was slow, meandering. I didn't think it was all that scary. I think it's shot very well. It's directed very well. It's very atmospheric and moody, but it's so uneventful and almost oppressive in its mood to the point that it's a bit overbearing, a bit too much. And Nothing really happens toward until the back end of the movie. If you've seen a film called Immaculate, which also came out this year, there are some similarities to be had with that. This is, of course, a prequel to The Omen, so it ties into that film quite well. It's got a great cast. Bill Nighy is in there. I have to question why he's in there, though, because he only keeps popping up here and there, and he's completely wasted. This is an Academy Award-winning actor who pops up in a horror film, which is unusual for him and for actors of his like, and they just don't give him anything to say or do. But he's the highlight of the film, I will say that. Beyond the overall look and the sound of this film. But yeah, this is just a really slow meander film. I didn't think it was all that scary. I didn't think it was all that interesting. It doesn't really go anywhere until the later half of the film. There are some good jump scares here and there, but overall, I did not like the first Omen. I would give it a 4, maybe even a 3. In fact, I would give it a 3 out of 10. And that's probably why I didn't review it on my channel, because I don't really have a lot to say that's on the positive. What else have we got? Back to Black. Back to Black is the Amy Winehouse biopic. So, not a huge Amy Winehouse fan, don't know a huge amount about her. I recognise some of her hits, but that's about it. Back to Black is a biopic based on her life, and it's one of those biopics that does try to tell her entire life story, which is always a risk, especially when you've only got like an hour 45 minutes to do it. One of the things that's most noticeable about this biopic, and about most biopics, is that it tries to paint the people it focuses on in a certain light. Most biopics, you'll see that who it's focused on, they're the hero of their story. They're the good guys. Yeah, they might go down a dark path, they might do some things that they regret, but they're always likable, they're always engaging, they're always interesting, and they are the main character. Back to Black, however, is a little weird in that it paints Amy Winehouse in a very negative light. It makes her very unlikable. It makes her very annoying and frustrating. It does not make you want to root for her. In fact, I think Amy Winehouse's depiction in this film is almost disrespectful. I don't know how accurate it is, so I can't comment on that. Maybe she was like that. Maybe she did have a bit of a reputation like this. But this film makes her out to be just a pain in the backside. It makes her out to be someone who is very outspoken and harsh language and doesn't really give a damn about anyone other than her family. And yeah, it's really not a good representation. Nope, and someone is trying to hack me. Yep, I will deny that. I don't know who's trying to log in as me. Nice try though. Two-factor authentication really works. But yeah, Back to Black, in many ways it is a by the books biopic. It goes through all the beats. It starts off from the beginning of her life. It shows you how she has an ambition and desire to do something with her life, and now she then gets it. It really highlights her determination, but yeah, it's hard to watch this film because none of the characters are... It's not that they're not interesting or engaging. They are well formed, they are detailed, there's depth to them. They're just horrible people. So I don't want to watch a film like that. So yeah, I am a little concerned about someone trying to hack into my account just there. But it looks like most of it's averted, so anyway, where are we at? Back to Black, what would I give that? Out of 10, probably a 5, maybe a 4. Yeah. It's hard to like a film when you don't like anything that's going on. Anyone But You, I believe I reviewed that for my channel, I'm not entirely sure. Did I review that? Anyway, Anyone But You is a rom-com. Sydney Sweeney, Glenn Powell. I'll make this a quick one. They have a lot of good chemistry together. Sydney Sweeney gets a lot of flack, and I don't get it. I actually think she's a very good actress, but I understand people might look at her and think certain things and might judge her based on appearances. yeah, there's definitely that going on, and all of the roles that she plays almost play into the way that she looks. But yeah, Anyone But You is a perfectly fine, enjoyable rom-com. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. It's about a couple who have this one night stand, basically, that then a misunderstanding and they fall out. They then get together again when their relatives and friends start a relationship, so they have to go to this wedding together. And they're butting heads throughout it because each one thinks that they've fallen out with the other, when in fact it was just a misunderstanding. It was just friendly talk that was misheard. And yeah, one of the things about this film is that it's them kind of trying to act up in front of their friends and family to pretend that they are something that they're not. And in the meanwhile, they realize something, and that is that they actually do like each other and they fall for each other. Very typical rom-com stuff. That's probably the weakest part of it. But yeah, it's fun, it's quirky, it's enjoyable. It's a pretty well-made film, I would say. But yeah, nothing outstanding. But the key thing is the performances of Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney. They've got a lot of great chemistry together. Very fun. 6 out of 10 I would give Anyone But You. Next up, Late Night with the Devil. So Late Night with the Devil is a Shudder original movie. It's a horror film that's unlike many horror films. So it's almost found footage, but it's almost documentary. What this is it's about a late night host who's struggling with the ratings. So in order to get the ratings up, on a Halloween special, he brings in someone who is supposedly possessed by the devil or a demon. And as you can imagine, not the smartest move. So what this film is it shows you essentially that episode of his late night talk show. And it shows you some behind the scenes stuff. It shows you him going off camera, talking to his producer and so on, and how they're changing things on the fly and they're worried about certain aspects. Late Night with the Devil is one of my favorite films this year. I think this is a very good, very well made film. It's got some scary stuff. It's got a good amount of humor in there. David Dastmalchian is the main character. He is the late night TV show host. He recently lost his wife to an illness, and that plays on him a lot. That's a big theme of this movie. We get to explore certain things and about the paranormal, about the supernatural, because of the TV show format. We get little interviews and segments, and different characters pop on here and there. It's very fun, very interesting, until the last 10 minutes. And this is what I think is the most disappointing part. The last 10 minutes tries to up the ante, and then it sort of changes format. For what this film is, it's almost found footage and documentary style all the way up to the last 10 minutes, when it kind of goes beyond the fourth wall. And I don't want to spoil it too much, but the last 10 minutes did take me out of it. What it actually does on a story level, I kind of like. Just the presentation of it and the style of it is so different from what came before, it's a bit jarring. So yeah, Late Night with the Devil, I thoroughly recommend it. I think some people are going to like the last 10 minutes. But yeah, it's a 7 out of 10 for me that I really want to give a higher grade to. I just can't, because those last few moments took me out of it. What we got? Boy Kills World. So Boy Kills World is a action film, plain and simple. You've got Bill Skarsgård. He's a mute character who is seeking revenge. And it's in this weird, world, almost like a Willy Wonka world in a certain regards, where this family kind of runs everything, and they're weird, they're quirky, they've got all this stuff going on. It's not a good film. Some of the action scenes are good, some of them are fun, but it's a film that takes itself far too seriously. It's a film that doesn't have a lot of story, the characters don't have a lot of depth, everything's so one note and bland, and just... what you see is what you get, essentially. If you've seen the trailer for this film, it's just that, but for an hour 45 or however long it was. And yeah, as an action film, there is something to enjoy here. On a story and character basis, there's nothing really going on. So, Boy Kills World, I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10. Poor. Yeah. Stuff to enjoy, but not a huge amount of it. Love Lies Bleeding. So Love Lies Bleeding is the Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien thriller. It's a film that harkens back to the 80s in terms of its style and aesthetics. Katie O'Brien is a traveling bodybuilder heading to Las Vegas for a new competition. She stops off in Kristen Stewart's local town and befriends her, falls for her. They start a relationship. And Kristen Stewart, who runs a gym, kind of pushes Katie O'Brien into taking steroids and drugs. That starts to mess with her head, and she starts to do things that she probably shouldn't. It's a crime thriller, so that gives you certain vibes for it. Ed Harris is the main villain and antagonist. He's got a weird hairstyle. This film, I think, has a lot of cool vibes and style because it is harkening back to the 80s in many regards. I can't remember if it's actually set in the 80s or not. I think it is. Yeah, I think it is set in the 80s. I don't think it is just a stylistic thing. But it's a thriller that doesn't have a huge amount of thrills. It's a thriller that takes its time to go anywhere, and it's mainly because it focuses so much on the relationship between Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien. And that's a good thing because they are great characters, they've got a lot of good chemistry together. I think this is Katie O'Brien's best performance to date. I've not seen her in too many things, but this is by far the best thing I've seen her in. And yeah, it's not the most enjoyable thing, it's not the most entertaining thing, not the most exciting thing, which is weird for a thriller. That's its biggest problem. Towards the back end, it even ventures into some weird territory. I'm not going to say fantasy exactly, but it kind of goes out there in terms of its ideas and scope of things. There's a lot of cool things about this film. I wouldn't necessarily say there's action moments in there, but there are some crime thrilling sequences. Stuff you might have seen in other like gangster flicks. Those are cool. But yeah, the core story and idea of this film, I like. It just doesn't always do anything interesting with it, which is a little disappointing. So Love Lies Bleeding, probably give it a 5 or a 6 out of 10. In the Land of Saints and Sinners. So In the Land of Saints and Sinners is a Netflix film starring Liam Neeson, and he is a hitman, essentially, an assassin. But he's towards the end of his career, and he recognizes that, and he eventually grows tired of it, so he tries to drop out of it. Only he gets drawn back in when his latest target is someone of renown and linked to the IRA. There's a lot of political elements brought into this. It's a good film, but it's very slow. I hesitate to even call this a thriller. In fact, I would call this a drama. It's more of a drama than a thriller, because none of what you would expect from a Liam Neeson action thriller, none of that stuff happens until like the final 20 minutes of the film. And this is about, I think it's like an hour 40 or something like that, an hour 50, something like that. It's shot on location in Ireland, and the cast of characters is very well thought out. They're all Irish, they've got these accents going on. It's a who's who of Irish actors, basically. You've got Colm Meaney, you've got Jack Gleeson, Laura Condo, is that, or Laura Condon, or I'm always mixing up her name, but she's the main villain here. She's like the lead of this like IRA little group that's going on. Towards the back end, when they start to seek revenge against this hitman, Liam Neeson, that's when things get really interesting, because that's when the stakes are brought up. Because what the film does well is, because it is more of a drama before then, it establishes all these characters and their relationships. Liam Neeson is trying to start this relationship with a neighbour that he's liked for some time, and he is trying to settle down, so you start to care about him and the others around him. So when everything is put at risk towards the back end, the stakes are higher, so it works well in that regard. And the action beats and the thrills towards that back end are very good because of that. It just takes a long time to get there. So In the Land of Saints and Sinners, I would recommend it. I think it is enjoyable, but it is slow, and you've just got to be aware of that. There's some good crime stuff going on there, with Colm Meaney being this like crime boss and giving out these targets, and Jack Gleeson being this new up and coming hitman who Liam is trying to like say, hey, avoid this lifestyle. This is not for you. You do not want to end up like me. But he's like all gun-ho, he's all pumped up, and he just wants to kill people because he likes it. So there is some depth to the story and the themes and messages they're trying to put across. So yeah, 6 out of 10 I would give that. Let down only by its pacing and its slowness. We've now got If. This is the John Krasinski film. Full disclosure, I walked out of this film halfway through because I really didn't like it. If you like John Krasinski from his days in The Office, if you like John Krasinski from his time in A Quiet Place or Jack Ryan, this is a very different John Krasinski. This is a family-friendly kid movie, and that's probably the biggest thing I can say right now, is that it is a kids movie. I was not the target audience for this. But so much of this movie, from what I saw, just had me scratching my head. I don't think it does a good job of establishing what it's about. I don't think it does a good job of explaining anything that's going on. It's a film in which imaginary friends exist, and certain people can see them, certain people cannot. Ryan Reynolds is in there, so, you know, you think Ryan Reynolds, you think, right, this is going to be a funny movie, it's going to be action-packed maybe. No. Ryan Reynolds is the least funny thing about this film. He's playing a very serious, deadpan character, and he's not all that interesting because of that. There's no action scenes in there, there's no thrills, there's no excitement. Instead, what you get is a half live action, half CG animated movie with some good acting, some great casting. Ryan Reynolds isn't necessarily bad, it's just he's not given anything good to say or do. And they don't do a good job of explaining the story, they don't do a good job of establishing the stakes or what it's about. John Krasinski plays the father of the lead character, who is in hospital with an illness, he's awaiting treatment. But every time you see him, it's weird because the child actor has to go into the hospital. She then has to walk through the children's ward, and for some reason, that's where her father is. Now, I don't know if there's a twist here. Maybe at the end, maybe there's some sort of big reveal as to why he's on the children's ward. But, yeah, this is a bizarre one because nothing's explained. Nothing is told to us. Nothing is shown to us in detail. And it tries to be funny, but nothing about it actually works. So, yeah, I ended up walking out of this film because I just could not find the fun factor at all. None of the jokes were there. It is colourful. The acting's good. The cast, the characters is good. But it's not funny. It's not quirky. It's just weird. And maybe if I stuck around, they would start to explain it, but it didn't feel like they were going to. So if I'm not going to rate, I'm just going to say I didn't like it. What else have we got? Sting is a horror film about a girl who befriends a spider, and then turns out the spider is actually an alien. This is a very by-the-books horror film set entirely in this one apartment block, and yeah, it's not very good, I have to admit. I don't think the characters are all that likable. The main character, the child, there's two main characters. There's the child, and then there's her stepfather who's trying to start a relationship with them, and neither of them are all that likable. It's the child from Abigail, I believe. So she puts up a good performance, it's just she's not all that likable. And it's a problem with a horror film in particular if you don't like any of the characters, because why do you care about the peril and the terror that they're being put through if you don't care if they live or die? And a lot of the characters in this film, they do die in gruesome ways. That's about all I've got to say about this. If you've seen a horror film before, you've probably seen everything this film has to offer. Sting, I would probably give a 3 out of 10, maybe even a 4 if I'm being generous. The Watchers. This is an M. Night Shyamalan produced film, but it's not actually made by M. Night Shyamalan. It's made by his daughter, whose name I'm forgetting off the top of my head, sadly. But this, I actually think this is a very interesting film. So it's a thriller. It's a typical Shyamalan thriller in many regards, in which a character is journeying through the woods, only it turns out they can't escape there. There's these creatures in the woods. We don't have a good idea of what they are initially. It then turns out there's a bunker in there, and these characters are taking refuge in there. None of them can leave because they realize that if they leave during the night, they die, essentially. And every night they've got to stand in front of the windows, and these monsters, they just like to watch them. They like to observe the humans. And there's a reason for that we'll get into later in the film. The Watchers, I think, has a very cool concept and idea. It's got a very interesting mystery, but about 2/3 of the way through, it reveals everything. It reveals what the monsters are, it reveals exactly what they look like, their motivations, their goals, and at that point it just carries on, and it becomes almost an action flick in many regards in that point onwards. The twists and surprises can be seen coming a mile off once all of that's done. And yeah, it kind of just nosedives into its third act. So The Watchers, I'd probably give a 5 out of 10. Starts off well, a bit slow, but the mystery is very compelling. It just, once you know the answers, it just carries on for all reasons that aren't justified. What else we got? I've kind of reviewed everything here. The last film I'm reviewing today is Horizon: An American Saga. So Horizon: An American Saga is Kevin Costner's new western, part 1 of 4. Yes, part 1 of 4, and this one is 3 hours long. It's a western. It's a very traditional western. It's a western that feels like it was made 30 years ago. And it feels very much like a western from the 60s in terms of the way it's looked, the way it's shot, its presentation, its representation of certain characters and groups and cultures. It feels very dated. At 3 hours long, it's also very slow. To say that this is a Kevin Costner-led movie is a bit of a lie, because, well, it's not a lie. It's just that Kevin Costner doesn't show up until after about an hour in. And then that first hour, it jumps from perspectives from one character to another, and another. It's got these different locations. It's very unclear how any of them are connected. It takes a long time to establish what the film's actually about. It takes a long time to get interesting and exciting. And it feels like this is a jumble of ideas that comes together in a rather messy, uninteresting way. It's so slow and drawn out, and to the point that it just robs it of all of its excitement and tension and interest. There's this Civil War story kind of going on where they're trying to battle the Native Americans as well. It just doesn't do a good job of explaining anyone's motivations. It doesn't do a good job of making any of the characters all that interesting. And at 4 parts, I struggle to see whether or not we'll see all 4 of these parts. I know we're definitely going to see part 2. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up just wrapping up part 3 into one film rather than 2 others. But yeah, Horizon: An American Frontier, or American Saga, not a very good film. Very boring, very drawn out. The cast on paper, in fact, everything on paper about this film, from the casting, the directing, the writing, everything, this should be a brilliant film. The cinematography is quite good, I'll give it that. But everything about it just feels a little dated and old. And it doesn't feel like a modern western. When you look at films like Killers of the Flower Moon, when you look at things that have happened in other westerns in recent years, there's a lack of grit here. It feels a bit more light-hearted, but also without acknowledging that. It feels like no one realizes that that's the type of western they're making here. If you want a good old-fashioned western, a western from the 50s and 60s, this one's right up your alley. But it's not one of the good ones. This isn't going to be a western classic. It's not going to be a Sergio Leone spaghetti western. And yeah, I didn't like this one. If I had to give it a score, I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10. So yeah, a lot of films I've reviewed today are the ones that I didn't like, basically. So there were some that I liked, but yeah. This has went longer than I expected. I've now got things I've got to do. So those are my film reviews that I'm doing today. I will do TV reviews next time. Just a little bit different for a stream, you know? I thought I'd try it out. If you're watching this on YouTube at the Youngster Grant Burton, I have uploaded to YouTube. Give me a subscription over there for all of my film and TV content. This past week I have reviewed Maxine. There's a full video edit of that on there. I also reviewed A Quiet Place Day 1. Check those out. 2 very different horror films. One was very good, one was very disappointing. What else? I feel like there was something else, but I'm forgetting about it right now. Anyway, subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me everywhere at _GrantBurton, Twitter, X, Threads, Instagram. If you're here on twitch.tv, give me a follow on here as well. I will be streaming again at some point in the future. Until next time though, thanks for watching.